the lecture. So now the recording is have been started, and as I said previously, we will talk about the type concept, anonymous type, partial type, enumerables, generics, but we start from the generics, and I hope the type concept we have finished. So I'm not going to address this topic for today. Main topic for today is data streams, file and stream concept, attributes, reflections, serialization. At the end, there will be time to ask questions, but still, if there is something you need to ask, just interrupt me and ask me. Because all the topics I will discuss in context of the code, let me open my Visual Studio and open the solution that provides all the examples. You can use the same code, you can use the same solution, trying to follow me, trying to open this more or less the same code to make sure that we are on the same page. Close all. And now it's time to ask questions. Let me recall that you can collect additional points, additional scores for the activity, for the lecture. And let's start from the generics. And first question is, what is generic type? And I'm talking now about the syntax. So let me here put it in the chat. You have time to answer this. And I try to find appropriate code. The code is in the class node. Here I can select the appropriate class. You can see that here we have class node, and there is something over here. So it actually answers the question what the generic type is. Talking about the syntax, not talking about semantics, talking just about the syntax, just one word. Don't try to describe it. Just answer the question using a few words. Okay, still someone is it's typing, but let me describe what we are seeing on the screen. Can you see my screen? I hope you see. If there's something wrong with this screen, now on the screen you should expect code of the node class. It is abstract class. There is something on the right side as a suffix for the name of the class, but the rest of the class is it's typical. It's typical. The first question is mm, if it's complex data. Of course, it's complex data because each class is complex. We can selector to select appropriate fields. We have next field value and constructor. And we have a constructor of this, but the class is abstract, so we need to inherit from this class to create appropriate objects. So next question for you, it is what a generic class is, but now we are talking about the semantics. But referring to the first question, we can recognize this part as a parameter. Actually, it is identifier or list of identifiers that from the syntax point of view is just a list of identifiers, nothing additional. But the question is what the syntax of this identifier is. Now we are trying to answer this question. We can see that this identifier is used in many places, but all of the places have the similar role, have the similar features. Okay, let's stop. Let's stop it. Let's stop this discussion and try to explain. The semantics of this parameter is that the parameter can be used in all of the places where we are using the parameter, the type parameter, or we are using the type itself. For example, this value is in front of the value it is type. So this identifier represent a type, but we don't now we are not defining the type. So the type is actually the parameter. Actually, we can change this parameter when we are creating nodes. Let's try to find where the node is created. Find all references. And for example, here we have an example where we have node enumerable. This class calls node enumerable, and we are using here it's a parameter, but as the internally we have a method that returns new instance of this class. So do you remember our discussion about the complex type and the structure type? Structure type represents graph of objects. If we have structure type, for example, node is a structure type because it has property next, and this property is of reference type. So here we can assign a reference to next object. But complex type, it is something. So actually, it's a node enumerable. It is also the structure type. It's because it refers to other object. It refers to other object. It could be a representation of the graph, but relating to the let's get back to the discussion about the complex type and structure type. For the complex type, we said the complex type has a selector. And here is an example. Here is an example how to convert the structure type into the complex type. Here we have, let me select a pointer. Here we have a selector, a definition of the selector. We are assuming that all the items of type parameter are available as a dictionary. Therefore, here we have something like index. We call indexer. It is actually the property that could provide item using appropriate index. But what is special for this case is that the index and the return value has the same type. So we can use an item as an index. Let's clear the screen. Here is the answer. Because we are using self-dictionary. It is dictionary, but has only one parameter. This parameter is it is reference to the object we are storing in this collection. Let me recall to discussion about the collection, and recall me that collection is something that implements something that inherits from the iCollection interface. In this collection, we can gather all the objects but use the same objects as the index. The definition of this type you can find, go to definition, you can find here, self-definition is just dictionary, but in this dictionary we have only one type, one parameter. So the same type is used to store in the dictionary and is used as an index to the dictionary, a selector of the dictionary. This way we can convert structure type into the complex type. Additionally, here we have something we call where clause, and this where clause is something that is used to provide additional information about the type. Here we are saying that the type must inherit from the equa table. It is required to have this inheritance because all the items that are used as the index uh, are required, it is key for this dictionary, is required to implement equatable to make sure that we can compare two items in the dictionary. We can implement this function that allows to get access to appropriate item. So from this lesson about the generic types, we can remember that generic types, it is type with the parameter of the list of parameter. All the parameter are indexes, and all the index represents something like type. Of course, we cannot instantiate generic classes. We can provide concrete types of the parameter. So creating the instance from the generic class, all the parameters must be defined. So finally, the type must be concrete. The type must provide all the details. There should be no doubt what the set of available of data representing by the class is in the set of the defined by the type. But let's go now to the anonymous type. And the first question for you, referring to the anonymous type, is I don't see any rising hand. Is anonymous type definition compliant with the type definition, with the generic type definition? Is it also the type? There's additionally we can use special keyword and about the meaning of this word we'll discuss in a couple of minutes. So let's me close all this stuff and go to the anonymous type. Actually, anonymous type is defined in the unit test. Here we have unit test, so we can see that unit test I'm using not to check the correctness of the code, but I'm using only for demonstration of the main features of the anonymous type. Anonymous type we have here, but you are still writing and okay, because the question is if it's really type. On the right side we can see that it is not right side is not type, it's not definition of the type, it's not reference to the type. Right side is just expression. It's just expression. So we are creating a value. We are creating a value and we are assigning this value to the variable that we have on the left side. So we can ask once more if really anonymous type it is type. Uh, Second question is, uh, okay, let me continue with this because still you are writing. You, you stop. Now I can ask you a question. Is anonymous type a reference type? Because yes, we can see that on the left side now the variable anonymous variable uh, has a prefix with the keyword var. It means actually it replaces the type. So we can assume that here it is definition of the type. Actually, it is definition. It is not definition here. It is just reference to the type. Here we should provide. Here we should provide identifier that we can use to refer to the type definition. But let me recall the definition of the type. We need two things. Type is set of allows values. It's the first part. Second part, we have set of methods. We have set of functionality defined for these values, the values that we have in the set allowed set. And from this we can guess that right side it is a value, but this value define the set of all possible values we can assign to this variable. How it is possible? There are two things we are using to define all the values. First, we can see identifiers that we are using to assign the value. On the right side of this sign is its value. It's here it's string, here it's integer. And in both cases, we are assigning to something that is variable. We can call it field, we can call it property. There doesn't matter, but it plays the role of the variable. It plays the role of it is placeholder of the value. From this expression on the right side, we can derive, we can guess all the possible values we have on the right side. The same is in this part. For this identifier, we can also guess all the possible values. In this case, it is all strings. In this case, it is all integers. So using these three items, identifiers, second, types of expression on the right side, we can derive actually all the possible values that we can have in this type. The type don't have the name, but still the type, anonymous type, confirms to definition of the type. Actually, it has all the features of the type except identifier. But identifier is not required to have a type, to deal with the type. To deal with the type, we need set of all possible values, and we need set of function we can apply to these values. So let's see on the next example. In this line, we are just checking the value of the field. So it answers the question: if we have set of functions, set of methods, of properties, or in this case, it is selector. We are selecting this variable or this field and checking and getting the value. Because it's variable, it is placeholder of the value, we can check if this value is equal to this one. Therefore, we can say that at least for this type, we have selector. Therefore, it is complex type. But the question is if it's class? Of course not, because for the classes we can provide full definition, so we can provide all the details we have in the class, including methods, including properties. In this case, it's impossible to define except fields we are using to as a placeholder for the values. We can use any additional functionality. This functionality it's limited only to the selector. But the question is, next question, if we can change the type. For example, this variable uh, is associated with a concrete type. It is anonymous, but still it's concrete. Therefore, the question is if it's possible to change the type. Let's uncomment this line, and in this line we are trying to assign something similar. The difference is that here, on the right side of this identifier, that it's variable, we have a different type. Here we have integer, and here we can see that it's double. In this case, we can say that, okay, but now the set of all the values are different, because set of values in the double and set of values in the integer are different. Therefore, here we are trying to change the set of possible values for the anonymous type. Therefore, it must end with the error. The question was if the reference if it's reference type. Here we can see that we are using operator new. So this operator creates an instance and actually provide reference to this variable. This variable is of reference type, and anonymous type we can see it is reference type. Additional proof, it's here, because for the reference variable we can assign null. Null is available for all of the variables that are reference variables. Additionally, let's answer to the question why this line is wrong. Because uncommenting this line, we are getting the error. This new anonymous variable, it is new variable, so it is. So the problem is, if what is the real problem with this variable? Because we cannot do something like that. The answer is very simple, because for this case, it is impossible to define a final set of possible values we can use for this variable, because on the right side we have null. Let me recall that the difference between the reference type and the value type is that in the reference type we have two values. We have reference and value. In the value type we have only value. It is impossible to say, for example, that amount doesn't have any value. Doesn't have any value because it's integer. It is value type. But for this, we can say that there is no value, but it's impossible. To define the type here using the reference to the null, because we need real value. So let's try to check if it's possible to set new. Oh, it is. The example is here. After definition of the variable, of the anonymous type variable, we cannot this one. There's I don't have appropriate. Yes, here.
May I have a question?
Yes.
Because you asked if an anonymous type is a reference type. And you said that the answer is yes, but what about a value tuple? Value tuple is a value type and it's anonymous type as well.
Yes, it's possible also to define. It's also possible to define anonymous types that are value type. But here we are talking about the reference types. But it's also possible to define something like that. You are right. But
Okay.
here, but here,
Okay, so
but
it was a
here,
question just related to the example. Okay, I get it.
yeah, yeah. In this example, we are using only reference types. But you are right. It is possible also to create. I'm not sure if I have, because I have no time to discuss all the possibility, and it is related actually to the language. Not all languages provides things like that, but for us it is very important thing for the next lessons where we are talking about the link. In link, we are using this anonymous types as the reference type, and actually in this case it must be reference type. But here we can see that it is possible after definition of the variable to assign null. Okay, any more questions for this? If not, let's go to the next topic, partial type and partial method. And the question now is find out difference between syntax of the concrete and partial class. Concrete and partial class. What is difference between concrete and partial class? In the meantime, I provide you an example. Just also example. It's impossible to answer all the question related to the partial class. We have one class, partial class, and here we have select second partial class. Anonymous class we can switch off. So what is the difference? We can see that here is a concrete, it is concrete class, but we have an additional word partial. Let's stop this discussion. So the only difference syntax, the difference between the concrete class and the partial class is the word partial in front of the class. It is the only difference. Of course, using the partial class, we can also use the partial method. So the next question is, uh, what is the semantic of the partial class? What is semantic? What is the meaning of the partial class? Let me copy it to the chat. Okay. What is the meaning? But from the syntax, you can see that the difference is just only this one, this additional keyword. Uh, for the syntax, what is the meaning of the two partial? We have two partial classes. Here it's one, and here it's second. For example, here we have inheritance, and we are implementing this interface. Here we don't have something like this, but the name is the same. The the namespace is also the same. Okay, still you are typing. So the syntax. What is the meaning? What it means that we have two partial classes? Actually, it's really okay. Let's stop the discussion now. You don't have everyone have provided an answer. I think you are collecting a lot of additional scores. What is the meaning? Maybe there's another question in the meantime. Uh, okay, stop it. Stop the discussion. Let's stop the discussion. And actually, the meaning of this two part, because the meaning is that it's the same class. It's exactly the same class. It is exactly the same class, But the definition of the class is provided in two independent parts. In two independent, what it means independent? Independent means that we are providing the class the definition in two independent files. But it's also possible to provide the definition, the part of the definition, the same. Let's try to do something like that. You can see that we can provide additional definition, additional part of this of the definition in the same file. But the question is, uh, what happens if we have, because uh, we must think about partial classes as about the one class. So the question is, what the development environments do with these partial classes? The answer is that we are merging the text to provide before the compilation. It is one of the reasons why we are talking about the build, not about the compilation, because first, before the compilation, we must to merge all the parts in the independent files in the same file. Doesn't matter, well, we must merge the text and actually to create something like one definition of the class. After that, we can compile. It is possible to compile the file, the class, uh, and use the type as only one. So it is time to ask next question. I'm not providing this on the chat because we don't have time to answer this question. The question is, what is the reason we are using partial class? What is the main reason? Actually, there are two reasons why we are using partial classes. One reason is, we'll talk about it during the serialization. One reason is that the auto-generated code. If the compiler or if the development environment generates automatically generate a code. The problem is how to merge the code that we are providing and is provided by the development environment. Using two independent files solves the problem because the tool could use independent file and we can use our code in independent file. So it is this way we can avoid conflicts between and we can safely merge the code provided by the compiler with the code provided by the developer. Of course, in this case, providing things like that doesn't make any sense because in all of the cases we must define the code. There's very and only a few examples where we can use things like that. But there is another reason. Another reason of the partial code, we'll get back to this topic during the last, or I think it's last lecture, using different languages. In this case, where we have partial codes, we can use different language for one part and different language for the second part. Two parts could be provided in different languages. Of course, the question is for you, it is question for future, it is question for the last lesson, how to merge the code. Because if the code is in different languages, merging the code doesn't make sense. Therefore, it must be something additional functionality. There must be something that must happens. There must be additional step in the processing of the text before merging, because merging of the text provided in the different language doesn't make sense. Next question is, what are here we can, in the partial class, we can also use the partial methods. Partial methods is only a header of the method. So its definition, its identity of the methods. Usually, the identity of the method, the name of the method, is identifier that we are using to name the method, but additionally, the list of parameters. We can, in many languages, including this language, um, we can use the method with the same name, but with different list of parameters. We call these methods overloaded. All the overloaded method is possible. So it's possible to use, but in this case, we must distinguish concrete implementation of the method from the list of parameters because the name of the method is not enough. The question is what happens because uh, creating this instance of this class, we must answer we must answer what happens why we are calling this partial method. The answer is that if the partial method is not implemented, I'm not sure if this case it is implemented, partial method. In this case, it is implemented. So you can check in the unit test that something happens calling this method. But if this method is not implemented, it is removed from the code. It is removed from the code silently. Therefore, we can create partial classes in spite that this partial class is not precisely defined, do not provide all the implementation details. For the partial method, it's not required that we provide all the implementation details. It must be private. Why it must be private? Because if the method is removed from the code, it is impossible to call it from different parts of the code. Uh, Therefore, we are assuming that it is private. Additionally, it must not provide value. It must not be a function because function returns value. It must not return the value because in this case it can be used as a part of expression. But we can remove remove the call to the method only as instruction, as the method call instruction. If it's part of expression, it is an argument of an operation, but all the argument must be precisely defined, so the functionality must be defined. We must expect that the argument must return a value. It is the same with the output parameters. It is not allowed here, for example, to use something like that because we get an error. Partial method cannot have out parameter because it could be removed from the code. But in this case, it must return a value. It is impossible to return a value after removing the call to this method from the code. Okay, so it is partial methods and partial classes. I hope that everything is clear, but you can ask the question. Next question, let's go to the data. Now we start discussion about data, uh, about the about the streams of data, about external data, and one representation of the external data, it's file. So the question is, what is file? But in the language terminology, I am not asking about what is the file as the external placeholder of the data, as the terms that we can know from the operating systems. What is the file in terms of the language? And I try to find an example. Uh, File example we have? No. Example, it's here. Okay. Someone it's The next question will be what is file in the operating system terminology? Here we are talking about the language terminology, using the language terminal. What is the file? Just one word. One word. No, don't provide me description. Don't provide me a book. Don't provide me uh, uh, very complicated, complex sentences. Just one word. Okay, I must stop this discussion. Let's ask next question. What is file in the operating system terminology? But here we can see that we have file. You have something that calls file. Let me use F12, and F12 goes to definition. From the definition, we can say that the file is just a static class. It's a static class. So it doesn't represent any real value. It represents set of operations. It provides set of methods we can use. So the question is, what is the semantics of this file? What is the meaning? What is the meaning of the file? Let me let me stop the discussion and return to the previous question. What the file means in the terms of the operating system? I believe that you finished a lesson that relates to the operating system, that covers operating system terminology, and from this terminology we know that file actually are two things. First, it is stream of bits, bit stream. It is first thing. And second thing is metadata that describes this bit stream, that describes what is the metadata. We have many possibilities here because it depends on the operating system. One metadata that must be provided in all of the cases for all of the operating system is the unique name of the file. So talking about the file, we must precisely define if you are talking about the class or if we are talking about um file that we have in the operating system. In the operating system, it is bit stream and metadata, but in the terms of the language, it is just the class. So the answer is, as I said, in case of the file in the language, it is class. But what is the semantic? Next question is, because in the language we have something. Okay, stop providing answer. Uh, in the language we have also streams, but let me answer to the question: what is represented by the file? From this, you can, for example, from this example, you can find an operation open file. Open file is a functionality that is provided by all the operating systems, actually file systems. It is operation of the file system. Therefore, we can recognize file, class file, that it's static as a file system. Usually on the computer, it's possible only to have one file system, and this file system provides access to the files we have not only on our computer. It's also possible to use the same functionality of the file system to get access to the external files provided by different computers. These the computers are connected to the network. But here we can see that on the right side we are creating. So let's stop the discussion. What is the stream in the language terminology? Stop. we can see that in language terminology here, F12, yes, it's class. It's abstract class. Additionally, we can see that it's abstract class. Therefore, it's impossible to create instances of this class because it's abstract. But it's only possible to create instances for the concrete files. Let's uh, answer the question why. Answering the question why, I am using F1 key, but the answer is uh, second on the second my screen here. Why it is abstract? It's abstract because we are using this class to represent all the possible bit streams. For example, it could be file stream. As I said, it's bit stream and metadata. Here we are getting access to this bit stream, but it could be buffered, it could be network. Here we have network. Where's the net? We have sockets, for example. It is related to the network stream. So we can use the same type to represent all the bit streams. It doesn't depend uh, of the source where the bit stream comes. It could come from the operating system, and also it could come from the network. It could come from the memory, for example. We can also create memory streams. But let's try to prove that it's bit stream, that it represents bit stream. Go to definition, and in the definition we can, for example, recognize the read operation. And on the list of the parameter, we can find that the buffer, the data we are reading here from the file is it's array of bytes. Each byte is 8 bits. So we can prove this way that in all of the cases we are recognizing, we are treating we are treating the stream as bit streams. Additionally, we can use, for example, to read a byte. So we are reading 1 byte, but converting to the integer. But still, we are reading the byte. So we are reading bits. In this case, 8 bits we are reading. The same is with writing. This is an example where we are writing a buffer containing of bytes. The question, but it is not the question for now. It is the question for the next lesson, uh, because usually we are talking about the text. For example, we are writing the code using the text. So think about it. What is the condition? What is required to talk about bit streams as a text, where the bit stream becomes just a text? But let's go back to our example. So next question is what the semantics of the stream is. In the syntax, it is just a class, but semantic meaning of this class, it is a representation of the content of the file on not only file, bit stream, just a bit stream. It could be, for example, file. Now it is very interesting question, why we need open operation? Let me ask this here. Why we need open? But let me, I can't get access to the chat. Oh, maybe here. Yes, here it's chat. I have many windows, so yes. Oh, I hope you can read my question. The question is, what is the main purpose of the file open operation? Why we need this operation? But in the meantime, let me go back to the example. Here's an example. On the left side, we have construct starting from using keyword in this language. So semantics, as I said, semantics is a representation of the stream. It's very useful to have. Let me recall the discussion about the collection. Usually, if we have a polymorphic polymorphism, we need to solve this polymorphism by definition of the uh, common set of functionality. Uh, for example, for the collection, we have operation add. So it is also it is always possible to add the next item to the collection. The same is with the stream. The stream also is abstract, but still it provides a basic functionality of the streams. Yeah, still writing. Is there any questions in the meantime? Because it seems that someone tries to say something. Okay. So the question now it is here. What is the using construct? What it is in the terms of the language? What it is? But let's go back. Why we need file open? File open. It's very important. All the answers that we need. For example, well, it doesn't matter what we need. First, we can see that we are using open to create an object, because here is variable and we are assigning to this variable reference to new created object. So we need to create object and assign to this variable. It is first functionality of the open. But it is not the most important thing. The most important thing, we can recover the functionality we can recover from this. This we are pointing that we are going to write to this stream. We are going to modify this stream. Therefore, but the stream is available for many users. We cannot assume how many users are using the same stream. Therefore, we must assume there is many users that are using the same stream. So if all users are trying to modify the streams, we could get problems with consistency of the stream, because someone could change the beginning and another one could change the end, but the end and the beginning of the file must be consistent, must be related to each other. So losing this relation, we are losing the consistency of this bit stream. So the most important, and actually for us, the most not important is not very. It is functionalities that we must consider in all of the times. It's that we are blocking the stream for modification for other users. After opening, we must create a critical section. We used these terms previously during discussion about the collections. It is similar thing here, that we are locking the file to make sure that only that it's modified. That only we modifying the file, that access from other users are not provided, are not, because it's not allowed, to make sure that the consistency of the file is. The answer to the question what the using is, because it was the previous question, now it's what is the functionality of the using? Correct answer to the previous question is that using is instruction. Just one word is instruction. It is complex instruction because it aggregates instruction, uh, internal instruction, but still is just an instruction. Here, here we have assignment instruction. That's always the first instruction. But next in the block, we can provide a list of instruction. So the question is enter a condition to select a file. So let's think about what is the condition to select a file but not a database. After locking the file, we the file is available only for us. It's only allowed for it's only provided for us. So the access from other user are blocked. And the answer is very simple for this question, but let's try to. This is just one word. Here we are locking the file. So let's try to imagine that we are locking the file in the hospital and we are using computer system for providing functionality in a hospital, a huge hospital, and many users are using the same file, and the file is locked by one of them. Therefore, all the rest must wait after the lock is removed. So we must remove the lock as soon as possible. Therefore, before we are using, and what is the semantic of the using? Semantic of the using is that we are calling just one method. Go to definition, and here we can see that stream inherits from this uh, interface. Go to definition, and actually in the using, we are calling dispose. What is the implementation? It depends on the concrete type we are using in an example. In this case, it is just file stream. And the file stream remove the logs, and it is the most important thing, because after removing the log, we can use the file could be used by another. So let's stop this discussion. The answer is that we are using file only where there is only one user working on the file. If we have multi-access, so the answer is multi-access. If there is multi-access, we must use databases, because databases are prepared for are prepared to be used by many users in multi-user, multi-access environment. Okay, that's all about files. Let's go to the attributes. And the first question is what the attribute is. What the attribute is. In syntax term, in language terms, what it is. I'm closing, actually I'm closing all these examples and going to the attribute. Attribute example, it's very important for us. Here we have attribute class. We have an example of the attribute, and don't provide description, just one word. Okay, let me provide the next question. What is an attribute, but what is the semantic of the attribute? What is the semantic of the attribute is next question. I'm waiting for you, but I'm preparing to provide the next question now. Okay. So the answer is that, of course, it is not enough to say that it's class. Here we have an example of the attribute. We can see that it is a class, but it inherits from the attribute class. So actually we must provide two things to answer this question. That it is class, but the class must inherit from the attribute class. Attribute class is also the class. Let's go pick definition to make sure that you can get access to this. You can see that it's abstract class. It is impossible to create object instances of this class, but we can inherit and create instances. But we can also call this as the attribute. It is also attribute. What is the role of this? In different languages, the syntax could be different, and the names could be different, but the semantics, more or less, is on languages is the same. First, mm, we can see that because the attribute is a class, to use the class, we can instantiate the class and create an object. The question is where, how to create an object from the class. Let me provide this question for you. How do I create an object from an attribute class? But semantics of the attribute is that it is class that provides additional information about the code. Additional information, here we are touching the problem with reflection. We'll talk about reflection in a couple of minutes. But here I can only say that reflection is something that it is uh, processing the text of the code as the data. So the code becomes the data for the processing. Therefore, the custom attribute, for example, as the attribute could be used as additional information about the additional data about the code. Um, Attributes we can use in a constructs like this. What it means, we'll answer in this question in a couple of minutes. But here we can say from this that it is limited where we can use attribute. If the class is attribute, we can additionally define how to use this attribute. Actually, where in the code we can use this attribute. But let me first check if we have here attribute class and this custom class here. This line proves that we can instantiate the class as usual using the new operator. Using the new operator, we can create we can create an instance of the class. So it works as a typical. It uses as a typical concrete. In this case, concrete type, but it doesn't provide any additional description of the code because from this line, we don't know where the attribute has been used. We can just create an object. It is a good approach for representing external data, but not representing the data about the code. If you are going to represent the data about the code, the additional descriptions should be located in context of the code. Therefore, we must find something different. How to create objects. Stop the discussion is one possibility. Additional possibility we have the answer. It's somewhere over here. Now we are starting this discussion about the reflection. So let me ask the question uh, that we asked during the laboratory, how to inject value without using assignment instruction. We are talking about dependency injection, but in our case, dependency injection relates to the assignment instruction, and we are using assignment instruction. But we can see that in some examples, people are using IOC containers. So the question is how to provide how to provide this functionality. What the injection means, but get me back to the question how to create. Here is the answer: how to create custom attributes. How to create attributes. How to create attributes. Now we can see that now we are working on the type. We have additional type. Go to pick definition, maybe this way. We have abstract class that is provided by the system library. It is provided by the system, so it is not related precisely to the reflection, but it is abstract. So we cannot create instances from this class. Additionally, after inheriting from this class, you can check it and try it in your code, but it's impossible to create. Still, it's impossible to create instances, even if we provide all the required implementation by the abstract definition. It is still impossible to create, so that this object must be created in a different way. It is an example how to create. It is type of keyword. Using this keyword, using this operation, we can create a type instance, type instance, but concrete one. We don't know, and actually we don't care what the concrete type is, because for us the most important thing is that it must inherit from the type. But still we are here. Let me provide you definition of this. You can see that this attribute type, maybe go to definition or pick definition, it'll be easier to read. Here we can see that the formal list of arguments for this method, get custom attributes, refers also to the type. It is one observation. Second observation is that we are working on the instances of this type. Get custom attributes comes from definition of the type. And actually, from this code, you can learn that we are creating instances of the custom attribute. We are creating instances, and now, first, we can recognize the location of the attribute, because the attribute is located in the type, in this type. So it must be a prefix to the type. It must be prefix to the type. And here we are creating object, so we know where it is defined, where it is used first. Second, we know we can use this reference to this object as additional data. So now it's time to answer the question what this line means. From this line, you can see that here, let's go to the pick definition. Pick definition, we can see that it's not the name of the class, it's the name of the constructor. So it represents a constructor, selected constructor. And here is the list of actual arguments we are passing to this constructor. And the list must be the same as the list of the constructor in the definition of the class. Additionally, we can assign Here we can assign values to the properties. It is not in this example, but in your code you can try it. So here it's possible also to assign values to the properties. So there's two functions of this construct. First, it is description, uh, which constructor use to create an object. Second, it is to provide, so it is three important things. First is to select the constructor. Second is to provide actual arguments. And second, it is to assign to the properties. After creation of the object, it is um, to provide additional information. Any question for this? It is, I think it is quite important. If there is no question, let's go to the serialization. And it's additional thing I think I should talk about attributes and reflection. First, return to the question how to inject method using an without using an assignment instruction. Let's stop the discussion now. The answer is, I believe that we discussed it during this laboratory, but I must be sure that everyone get the answers. It is attached at the attached property. It is one example. Here it is unit test for the attached property. But let's examine this attached property. Attached property has a constructor that can be used to provide any reference to any object, and it provides a property that can be used in the code to assign a value. But this class cannot use it. Is simulation of the IOC container. In the IOC container, we are doing more or less the same things. Actually, we have, assuming that we have reference to the object, we must assign to this object a value that actually refers to a different object. Here, it doesn't matter if it's reference or not. It could be also the value. It could be value type. The answer to the question how to do is property info. Property info, we are getting the reference to this object we are getting from analyzing the type. Here it is data source, and this method is defined for all of the objects, and we can here get, as previously, the type, reference to the type. Using the type, we can get reference to the object that represents, that can deal with the property. But here the property, the name of the property is provided as a string. So we haven't has access to the property. Actually, this way we can get access to any property. Doesn't matter. We need only a string. Usually we need a name of the property. So referring to the variable that has appropriate type, we need a selector, and we need to select appropriate property. This way we can select property using a string. So during the code execution, the second phase of the code development, we are deciding about the name of the property. Therefore, it could happen that the property is not provided by the type. To avoid this problem, we are checking if the property as provided by this by this reference to the object. If this object provides property like this and creating property info that now we can use to assign the value. Here, the setter, it is something that it is similar to assignment instruction. So it replaces assignment instruction. There is no need to use the assignment instruction to assign value to the selected property. This method is used, of course, it comes from the reflection property info. It's go to definition. Is defined by the reflection as usual. Most of the types are abstract to make sure that we are not creating these instances of this classic manually. We are assuming that all of the objects are created automatically by the container. So the answer for the dependency, what the injection means? The injection means assignment. How to deal with assignment without assignment instruction? The answer is here, where we are using property info object, and this property info object replace the assignment. Is it clear for you? Okay, so let's go to the serialization. Serialization. And the first question, what this serialization is? What is serialization? Question for you. And I'm trying to find appropriate example. Let's close all the windows, not necessary, not useful for us. Okay, you are still writing, but there's no time to write book. It's time to write a few words. All of the question, answering to all of the question, it's possible to provide just a few words. There's not required to describe it. Unfortunately, I'm impossible to assess your answers now because it is not. I don't have time. So let me ask the next question. Yes, I think it's good time. What is an object state? And answering to the first question, serialization is a process. It's an operation that we are converting the object state into these bit streams, always in the bit streams, using the bit streams. So it is very important question. What is an object state in this case? Because converting something into bit, we know what the bit streams is. It's just stream of bits. So for each bit we can recognize the previous one and the next one. We can recognize the first and the last bit. What the bit is, we also know because we know that it is a character in the binary alphabet. Doesn't matter what the character is, but it's one of, because the binary alphabet has only two characters, it's one of them. So answering let me go to the next question. If we know, I'm not sure if we know what the object state is, but in any case, there must be someone that defines what the state of the object is. Who is responsible for the correct definition of the object state. But let me return to the previous example. For example, here we have a class, and we are going to serialize this class. So we are going to convert the object created from this class. We are going to create bit of streams. We have three properties: max income, minimum income, and average income. So what what should be added to the bit streams to make sure that we can recreate the object? Because the main reason of serialization is deserialization. After serialization, we are creating bit streams. After deserialization, we are creating objects. Of course, the object must be compliant with selected type. So it is impossible to, it is not, it is impossible, but it actually doesn't make any sense to put into the bit streams description of the functionality. It doesn't make sense, for example, to provide description of these properties, but it makes sense to provide to the stream values. The question is if all of the values we should provide. In this example, we can see that doesn't matter what the average income in now is. We need to save in the stream only these two values: maximum income and minimum income. It is enough because average is calculated all of the time. So after providing these two values, we can calculate the third value. So let's get back to the question. Let me stop the discussion. Who is responsible by adding the next question? How can we influence which values? How can we influence which values will be included in the object state? Returning to the previous question, who is responsible? Of course, we are responsible. We developers, we software developers are responsible to define what the state of the class is, because only we know what is important or not. In this case, it is very clear. There is no doubt that average income is not required to be safe in the stream, because it's calculated. But in the typical scenario, we must define what is the state of the object, what is required to put in the stream. Therefore, very important question is how to influence, how to make sure that only required values are in the stream, that we are not wasting time, and we are not wasting memory, and we are not wasting we are not wasting place, for example, on the hard drive or on the external store to put values it is not required. Actually, the answer is that there are three possibilities. Let me answer. Next question. Here it is, the next question. Because we are talking about bit streams, but usually we are using different formats, not only bit streams, but we are using also text. So the question is, when does a bit stream become text? What is the reason? What is the condition that must be met to make sure that bit streams we can recognize as a text? But returning to the previous question, we have three options. First option you have here on the example, that we are deciding what is important for serialization, and uh, we must provide we must implement serializable interface peak definition. Can see that here we have only one method, get object data. And in the get object data, we developers, we are responsible to save in this serialization info only values that are required for deserialization, only values that are important for us. Additionally, we can define the names we'll use in the stream. So here, for example, we are referring to the to the string, and we are creating a pair, value key pair. It is key and must be unique, and is the value, it's we get the value from the property. So it is the one. It is the first. Answer to the question is manual work, but sometimes we are using not manual work, but we are using frameworks. It's the same with getting access to the, for example, here XML file is an example where we are using framework, we are using functionality that is provided directly by the development environment. So there is no need to use additional frameworks, but there is a lot of frameworks you can use for serialization. Here is the operation we are using to serialize. But in this case, it is, of course, impossible to manually select values that must be used by the serialize method to convert these values into the stream. In this case, we are using attributes. So the next answer, how to influence, how to say what is important for serialization, is using attributes. Depending on the framework, different attributes are using. And in this case, serialization use reflection. It is the same approach as we discussed previously for the dependency injection, where the dependency injection is realized by the framework. It uses reflection. In this case, serialization also is implemented using the reflection. So during the reflection, we can get attributes, and we can learn from the attributes what is important, what is not. The next answer, the next option, the next scenario is to use properties, only public properties, and use the properties for the serialization. First, all public properties, and second, the properties that has getter and setter. If the property doesn't have setter, as in this example, doesn't make sense to get the value, because it's impossible to restore the value because setter is not provided. So you must remember three methods. First method is manual, second is attributes, and third it is features of the properties. Public property, and the property must have getter and setter. So it is convenience. It is just an agreement between the user of the framework and the framework provider. So answering the question where the bitstream becomes text, it is very simple. It must provide, let's stop the discussion. it must be defined encoding. It must be provided encoding. Encoding means that we define a relation between the stream bits, selected streams. So we are defining the length of the bit stream, selected bit stream, part of the bit stream that represent a character, and the character treated as abstract. On the screen you can see that it is character. We can recognize this character, but it is also the same character, but it's different character because I am applying zoom to increase the size of this character. So it is abstract character. We know what is actually the alphabet. It's created from the abstract character, and we can use encoding to assign characters to the bit streams. At this time, so always we have the file is the bit stream, but the bit stream, if for bit stream we can recognize encoding, we can use this bit stream as a stream of character from selected alphabet. In this case, for example, we are talking about the software, we are using a native language set of characters. Okay, it is all for today. So it's good time to ask questions. So let me start QA session. That's all for today. So thank you all for now. Thank you for your attention. If you don't have questions, if you have questions, maybe it's better. The best way it is to just to get in touch during on Teams and organize face-to-face meeting or group meeting or something like that to answer the question. So thank you very much and bye-bye. You can log out, and I am